Do you sometimes hate when there's like two potential avenues to do and there's not a clear answer and it just gets your goat because you know or maybe worse than that, there's something you really want and then something else that you have to do and you just can't have them both. Or maybe things don't go your way. Well, you're in luck because today's episode we're going to be talking about either way, everything's going to be fine. This is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. What's going on, Danny?
What's up, Randy?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. I actually heard this. It was a story from one of the books. I think it was, what's the name of the book? Anyways, I'll remember it later. But it was
Feeling
talking
good?
about
Feeling great?
I
Oh,
know, surprisingly
really?
not that one. Yeah. Yep. It's called The Way Out. It was a book
Ah,
about
okay.
like uh pain, psychosomatic pain called The
I thought you
Way
were gonna
Out.
say
Very good
about
book.
escape rooms.
Yeah, right? That too. And so it was talking about Tina Fey back when she was in her 40s, and she went to her doctor and she was like having a mental breakdown because she was like, do I pursue my career or do I have a second child? Because
Oh, that is a
if
tough
I'm at the
question. Yeah.
point, I'm at the point in my life where like if it's really hard to get your career back if you let it go at this point. But I'm also at the point in my life where if I don't have another child now, it's gonna be really hard to have one later. And her doctor said to her, you know, either way, it's gonna be all right.
But and it will though. That's the funny thing. I think we forget too, like the value of a given path, choice, or action is totally relative and subjective. And more often than not, we are so like I think we forget too, like how adaptable we are and how able and like how quickly we can just get comfortable with a norm, no matter what it is. I think about this a lot. Like you look at people that like get convicted in prison that especially the ones that are like innocent didn't do it. Like that sucks. But you have no choice at that point but to just keep living your life. And like yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they don't struggle and they're not mad and angry and stuff, but you see a lot of them over time, like do end up like, they figure out a way to deal with it, right? Because it's like that's part of being a human being is like no matter what happens to us in a sense, we figure out a way to deal with it. And each path is going to provide things that you can't imagine, right? It's like looking back on your life and being like, well, I wish I didn't do that. It's like, well, if you didn't do that, though, a lot of things would have changed, right? And so it's like, do you want to get rid of all of that? Because you don't know which choices would have come up. So yeah, it's a really good point there to make, I think. It's interesting.
Yeah, I like what you said there about the prison example because that's kind of that illustrates the dichotomy of control. Because once that happens to you, like let's say you get sentenced for a crime you didn't do, you have to go to prison, you learn all about how to hold on to soap and not drop it.
You also
And
learn about a lot of things that are not in your control.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. And so like, but it's all of a sudden you need to recognize, well, that's not in my control. I can't undo that. I can't change that. There are things that I can try to change it. Like I can try to appeal it or different things like that. But how do I make the best of the situation?
Yeah. And I think that's the important thing too, is asking yourself, like, how can I like make the best of what I have, right? Because it's interesting too, like, in that case, I think that's an interesting example too, like, because that's a really, because, she is famous. She got Tina Fey, I mean, she has a really, she has a really good career and all. And like, so I could see that tension there too, because like at that age, you're also at that age where like having a child is going to get harder. But it's like, there are other options still though, even beyond that. Like she could adopt and stuff, whatever. Like there's so many
Mhm.
other things you can do too. And you don't know, either path, they probably are going to be fine, right? Like, especially in her
It
situation. Like,
yeah, but it's also interesting because we at those moments, like I know I can think back to my life at moments like that, and it's like we think we can read the future, like we think we can see the way down both of these paths,
yeah.
and but we're terrible at predicting the future.
We are. And what's funny? It also reminds me of like that like when people like younger people or something think about having a kid and they're like, well, we're waiting till this is set up and this is set up. And then people will be like, well, there's no right time, and it's the same with like a lot of decisions in life where sometimes you can prepare all you want, but like if you don't have a very clear idea of what your goal is for that preparation, there's always going to be other things you can make better before you introduce this new change. So a lot of times it's better to just pull the trigger because like thinking about it, doing these sort of like vague preparations, it's just kicking that can down the road forever. I remember that even
Hmm.
when we were like thinking about like transitioning like our careers originally, like I was super scared of doing that. And like at the same time though, I knew I didn't want to do what I was doing. And it's like it was kind of nice that we did just pull the trigger randomly almost because that helps. It does help kind of force you to just make a decision. And then,
Hmm.
things happen.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I remember some analogy about like learning an instrument or something like that and it taking 10 years and like adding your age and be like, I don't want to be 10 years older and still learning to play the piano or whatever. And it's like, well, you're going to be 10 years older anyways. So you might as
If you
well
want to be
just,
10 years, if you want to learn, if you want to be a pianist in 10 years from now, you might
yeah,
as well start now.
yeah, yeah,
It is,
yeah.
but it's funny because like we were talking about this, I don't know which episode, but because you've been reading those books and like about like cognitive
Hmm.
distortions and stuff. But I
Mm,
think so much of our problems are just from that anyway. These beliefs
yeah.
that we either have more control, that we can predict the future, or that our decisions will have such a huge impact on our overall happiness and stuff. And it is
Hmm.
hard, don't get me wrong. And we've talked about regret before. Like, I think it's important to do things or try things so that you don't regret them if there's stuff that's really important to you. But figuring that out too, a lot of times, like in these situations, like Tina Fey's or like whatever, like, getting clear about like what really is valuable to you, what really matters the most. Is it like your career? Is it the kid? Because that,
Hmm.
could be a situation of regret, and therefore that should probably influence the decision too.
Hmm. Yeah, and they say about regrets more oftentimes it's things you didn't do than the things you did.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, generally it's always, I think, isn't it? Most often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm trying to think of instances where it was regretting something that you did, but I don't know. Come to me
Well,
later.
I've always found that hard because it's like, well, kind of similar to what I said before, right? You've already lived through it. And so to like, it's like
Oh yeah,
negative
and you're
wishing,
you're looking
like,
at it with hindsight. Because like
yeah,
had you had limited knowledge back then, and had you known what you know now, you clearly wouldn't have made that decision.
but you didn't
But
have that knowledge back then. You gained that
yeah.
knowledge from making the decision. And not to
Hmm.
mention everything else that's changed in your life was probably a consequence or in some way related to that decision, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is interesting though. I think about it a lot because I think this is something where like, especially people, we transition careers, people who are in that position of thinking about that. This is a, this is probably something that stops them, right? This fear that like it won't be okay. But it's like, if you're already unhappy in your current life, what is there to lose? And it's funny, you are okay, you are fine. I mean, you're not like dying or anything, so what is there to lose? And I think,
Well, we're not dying in the short term. Yeah.
yeah, 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 we are always dying, that's true. But
Well, that so like when I heard it the last time, I was kind of at a place where I was a bit unsettled. And when I just heard in the book them say that, like either way it's gonna be all right, I felt something inside of me just go like, ah,
yeah,
like
because
it
it
was just
will
like,
though.
oh
Like,
yeah, I forgot that. Either way it's gonna be all right. Either way, time's gonna move on. Either way, I'm gonna die, never be remembered. It's gonna be all right.
yeah, either way, that stuff's all gonna happen. It was funny,
Yeah.
it's funny you mentioned that. Like that was one of the things I remember when I first read Camus and Existentials, and it like really got me was that like because they all really are like, this we all have this one life. There's nothing after this. And a lot of people will initially view that as depressing, right? Or sad or whatever. But to them, it's like, so that means everything's permitted. There's no rule. Do whatever's right for you. Because in the end of the day, it doesn't matter. This is your one blip, your time. And I think it frees you up a lot from the social, because I think so much of our indecision and struggles with decision has to do more with external things than internal. It has to do with pressures from the outside, perceived expectations, perceived obligations, all that crap, values, right? Wanting to be part of the norm rather than, do our own thing. And we forget that this is like our one chance, and really none of that actually matters.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually just had an experience like this past week where there's something that I took on that I didn't really want to take on, but it wasn't like a straightforward yes or no, because if you would have asked me just straightforward yes or no, the answer would have been no. But there were so many other like conditions on this, like the relationship dependent
I can
upon
guess
it and
what it
all this other
is.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so like it's crazy because I was thinking about it afterwards, and it caused like a little bit of friction in the relationship, and it was palpable for both people. And it was and then I addressed it afterwards. I was like, listen, I just felt like I was kind of like backed into a corner. I didn't feel free to say no because it wasn't just a simple yes or no question. It was like, does this relationship mean anything? Blah, 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 whatever else I made it be. But it's just like
Yeah.
things aren't always straightforward.
No, they're not. But I think a lot
Rarely
of that,
ever.
rarely ever, but I think also a lot of that, like, a lot of that, the reasons why there are also things we're putting onto it, Because, like, I do wonder sometimes, like, if you talk to the other person honestly, like, would they see it that way?
Hmm.
Like, as the relationship being a factor in it like that, or as these things being a factor? Is it stuff you're
Yeah,
just
probably.
putting onto it?
Yeah,
It's
probably.
funny. Oh, yeah. I mean,
Probably.
it
I
happens, right?
just need approval. I'm seeking approval and love and validation
Yeah.
externally. That's it.
That's all it is, right? Yeah, it's funny. The,
Yeah.
oh, God. Well, it's like when people, it's one thing like because I've had family members like guilt trip, right? You or something, because a lot of people experience that. That always annoys the hell out of me because it's like, you know, like, don't try and tell me I have
Yeah.
obligations that whether, and act like
Hmm.
there are these real things because they're not. But like, I don't know, it's interesting. But I think most people in most situations we're adding that. It's not the other person adding that stuff to it that making it hard.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
actually don't know where the hell I
Yeah.
was going with that. I had
Well,
it
I
locked
was
in.
thinking about I feel I'm always thinking about stuff, I guess. But I was
It's
thinking
hard,
about it
right?
the other
Having
day. How like
self-consciousness.
how like you get a bunch of flack for not spending time with people in your family. But it's like you didn't get to choose your family. They're just who were there when you popped into this universe. All right. But then nobody gives you flack for getting a divorce with somebody you didn't get along with. And this was
Yeah.
somebody that you chose actively, that you were in love with, and it's such love that you want to spend your life with them.
Most people are
And
very
then,
encouraging and like
yeah,
positive even about it.
but if it's family, no, that's family. And it's just it kind of blew my mind looking at it that way because I was like, that doesn't make sense at all. Like, what's wrong
No,
with people?
don't get me wrong. I think, it's funny. I think we have our society and like values and stuff probably don't mesh with like the reality of like our histories, our past. You know what I mean? Like in the sense of like evolution and stuff. Like, yeah, way back in the day when like a village was like 8 families. Your family
Yeah,
mattered because that was your unit and that gave you guys
that was the only
power.
way that everybody survived.
Exactly, right? And you relied on them for everything. But like in this day and age, yeah, I agree. Like, and it also depends on circumstances and stuff. But the funny thing is, like, I think that's where that either way everything is fine too comes into play because that also is like a good perspective or attitude to take on things that helps you kind of focus on, well, I can make this good anyway. Good things are going to come out of this regardless. So it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Maybe I just try things
Hmm.
out and see what happens, or maybe I, just choose and move on.
Yeah,
It's also funny too, because
yeah.
we act like we can't. I like when, I mean, it's very rare when there's decisions that we can't remake. Especially
Mm.
crap like that, like choices between these two paths. Like we can always reinvent ourselves. We can always change our course in life. And at the time that we're making the decision, though, it really does feel like a lot of times we can't. Like this is somehow final. I'll never be this. And there are cases, don't get me wrong, where like, I mean, it's
Final answer?
yeah. But it's just funny because I think, like that situation, like she could change her mind in 6 months, right? I mean, you could change your
Yeah.
mind again. So yeah, I think that's a really good way to look at
Hmm.
it, though.
Yeah, so there you have it. Either way, it'll be fine. Whatever you're worrying about, either way, it'll be fine.
As you
But
said, we're
that's
all
all
gonna
for
die
this.
anyway, so who cares?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Probably sooner than later. So that's all for this episode. If you did enjoy it, we got hundreds more episodes on YouTube, your favorite podcasting place, wherever. This is the Essential Stoic Podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. I'll see you later, Danny.
Later, Randy.